the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York. Follow her voice, a straight dog and nice. She's a pushy broad from the Bronx, oh yeah. Don't be surprised if you wanna listen twice. Make decisions, find the right choice. Know yourself better, find your own voice. It's okay if you need help today, cause everybody needs a little push. From the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York.
Good morning and welcome, Transformation Talk Network listeners. My name is Ellen Stewart and I am the pushy broad from the Bronx. Welcome to my show, Recovery Recharged, where we share advice and support from experts in addiction and recovery. You know from listening to me for 5 years that the pushy broad has been in recovery for 38 years. Recovery loud and proud. I'm extremely grateful to be here and to be doing this show with you and bringing resources to you every single week, especially those of you in early recovery and those of us that are seasoned in recovery, because there are some life lessons that we learn here. And one of those lessons is to be ourselves and to be honest in who we are. Because we spend so much time in the shadows before, and we spend so much time sneaking and conniving around. And now that we are in recovery, one of the best things about us is that we get to discover who we are. And we're not only honest to the world, but we are honest to ourselves. And so in the spirit of this, I want to talk about authenticity today, what it means to authentic individual and to begin to realize that and unleash your own potential. So, of course, the pushy broad brought in an expert, and that expert is Miss Kristina Holle. And Kristina is going to talk to us about your authentic self. In fact, she is the founder of Authentic You Coaching. So she's a transformation coach, and who better to talk about this than on the Transformation Network, right? Kristina is a transformation coach, and she's also a human resource expert, and she's going to unlock our true potential and show us how to overcome all the obstacles that impede our progress. So the pushy broad from the Bronx and Recovery Recharged welcomes Kristina Holle. Good morning, Kristina. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. So let's go right into it. You're the authentic coach, right? Or authenticity coach. So tell us, what does authenticity or authentic mean to you?
It really means to be aligned in your truth and without judgment from the external world. Like really be able to listen to yourself, love yourself, trust yourself, and be able to proceed in a way that you feel that you're very comfortable to step forward. I think that what we have in our society, it's very hard for people to step into their authenticity.
Okay. And I completely agree with you. And one of the key things that I tell my clients is, and my motto is, what other people think of you is none of your business.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know, does this permeate not only personally, but professionally? Can we be authentic in our professional life as well?
I think we have to be. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We have a structure that has been set up where you fit a mold, right? A leader looks a certain way, so we don't necessarily honor authenticity the way that we need to. Because I truly believe if you are truly authentic, you can inspire, you can motivate, you can do things on a much deeper level, but it has to be recognized and it has to be honored. And we have a lot of work to do there because a lot of organizations have a set way in how they think leadership is supposed to look.
It sounds pretty personal to you. Is this something that you can share with us? Maybe a pivotal moment in your life that you felt you needed to be more authentic?
Yeah. So I've been in corporate for 25 years in senior HR leadership roles, and I always worked with men. So I was pretty much I was like a guy, right? In order to fit in with the guys. I had become very tough, a little bit more aggressive, and I lost touch with me. And, there is a very nurturing, compassionate side that can come through when we integrate, that feminine side, I guess, the more authentic side for myself, right? I would be masculine and feminine, and it should be integrated. So when I started to realize that I lost that, I was like, oh my gosh, who am I becoming? Yes, I'm super successful, but I'm not 100% me. I'm actually emulating more masculine traits rather than stepping into the combination of both, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for me, it would be like being a pushy broad.
Yeah, 100%. Right. But and then you have to feel comfortable to step forward and be that person. But you also probably have soft sides to you too, correct?
People say that I do, but I
Yeah.
completely understand that. They tell me, but understanding that the whole reason I became a pushy broad is because I am entitled to compete in a man's world and business,
Mhm.
but I am also entitled to be my authentic self and bring the feelings of femininity behind it, bring the emotionalism without over emotionalism, right? To temper myself and to still show my heart and to speak my mind at the same time. So that's something about what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I would add, it is necessary now because we are in a crisis with mental health issues, people not feeling supported. They don't need more of the push. They actually need the compassion to help them kind of bridge whatever needs to be done. The push is the container. So you can create the safe space, right? And then you can be compassionate, you can give tools so people can bridge and be their best potential. But
I
there is definitely a piece there that is missing, I guess, in the corporate world for sure. I see it all the time.
Well, my coaching for Pushy Broad is I always tell my clients you're a cheerleader and you're a
Yes,
drill sergeant
a hundred
simultaneously.
percent.
So that's exactly what I try to bring to the table. But there are some very, very unique issues in business to begin with. So let's talk a little bit about some of the common misconceptions about authenticity. What have you encountered?
So this makes me laugh. I used to see it in my office all the time. When people will come in and they totally blast people and they're completely rude and they feel as though, well, I spoke my truth and you have to listen to me. That's not authentic. That's you taking a temper tantrum. Authenticity is really around being in alignment with truth and speaking in a way that is compassionate and kind. You still can say what you need to say, but you don't need to crush people in order to be authentic.
Do you
So
sometimes talk to leaders and bosses this way? Because sometimes that's how they lead, rather tyrannical and dictatorial. And do you think that they are tempered by what you're saying?
absolutely. Well, there's the whole saying, you get more bees with honey than vinegar, right? So what would happen with me is that some people wouldn't know how to communicate. They were very much in the dictatorial way. It's my way or the highway. They couldn't get there. And they're thinking they're speaking their truth. But the way we speak, the how we communicate, you can say whatever you need to say, but it's how we connect. Authenticity is so important because that's how you connect with people. When they can actually see parts of you and you start building real relationships, you can build more high productive teams or colleagues or whatever relationships outside of work. It's quite important to understand that authenticity is part of it. Now, what's happening is that people can see through it. Like something has shifted with the generations from when, you and I have been witness of being in a corporate environment with more senior way of running businesses to now with millennials and Gen Zs. There has to be a shift. And that level of compassion, that dictatorial piece is not going to work. They're looking for more authenticity. Can you inspire? Can you motivate? Can you connect with me?
So, can you teach authenticity? Can you
I think
retrain someone?
I think everybody has the capability to be authentic, but are you brave enough and bold enough to put down the masks to go there. And, can you imagine, there's many masks that we wear, but can you imagine if you could take them down and not really have to wear a mask? Like, I feel I'm pretty consistent. You're probably the same way. Like, you're probably the same way you are with your friends, and you're at work or on the podcast. You're pretty aligned there. But not everybody's like that. Like, I do tons of work where I'm like, whoa, okay, your work mask, is that working for you anymore? And what's happening is that there's a higher threshold where people are looking for authenticity. Like, we don't need more of another mold to put on. They're quite burdened already with all these masks. We need to teach them to take them down, because when they do, that's when the authenticity starts to come through.
So when the masks disappear, the humanity emerges?
I
Would we
believe
say
that.
that's closer to authenticity, the humanity?
Absolutely. Because when you think about authenticity, it's really about truth and an alignment in your truth. And the highest level of truth is love, compassion, kindness. The lowest level, if you go down, is fear, judgment, shame, all that horrible stuff that is only going to take you further and further away from your authenticity. We have to get bold enough to be able to speak our truth.
So how does one navigate situations, say, in the social media world? What happens in social media, especially with millennials and Gen Z? Are we losing our authenticity, or are we gaining it? What do you think?
So it's quite interesting. I had a conversation with a colleague just recently. Social media is merely a platform. It's what we use the platform for. So there is two different things going on. Now, if we're looking at the Kim Kardashians of the world, who I can't stand, I'm going to say openly, I think it's disgusting that these are role models that I'm speaking my truth, role models or influencers to young generations that are coming through. It sends the wrong message. But they're all about followers, and they're sending this fake whole image of what humanity is, or whatever. I wouldn't even say that. But then you have another thing that seems to be emerging with, people that are trying to create like a counter to that. So I don't know if you've seen Pamela Anderson, believe it or not, who I never assumed would be walking around with no makeup on now, talking around about like, this is who I am. You had Julia Roberts, who's like starting to push against the media, social media, about this is how we show up. So it depends on the person who's utilizing the platform. Are they using it to show that there's a more truthful and authentic way to be, right? We see inside celebs' houses and all this stuff. It's a voice, right? YouTube, Twitter, you can say whatever you want. People are very vocal. But the concern is, how are we using it? And when I think of this younger generation, if we don't start counteracting it, we could be in a lot of trouble. So I'm happy to see that people are starting to speak up against some of the superficial stuff that's being portrayed out there.
And also the fact that this not only involves our social media persona, but then begins to involve our personal relationships and our personality in general. So tell us how authenticity impacts our relationships on a personal level.
People want to connect with real people. So if I show up here with my corporate mask, you're going to show up with your corporate mask, right? We're not going to connect. You will look like great business colleagues, but we're not connecting. But when we learn to take down the mask a little bit, so I run retreats with women, and it's like, it blows my mind. They come to the door, they all have their masks on. By the end, the masks are down, people are connected. They have really, there's a healing that happens, because human nature, we need to feel as though we connect. We need to feel as though we belong. I think Brene Brown, it really stood out for me, is that when we try to fit in, you're trying to fit a mold. You're not belonging. It's because you're still trying to fit what you think other people are going to accept you like. So when we start to understand that we need connection. We need relationships, meaningful relationships. The risk right now is social media. Well, I had the because I'm actually coaching some younger women, and I'm like, well, if we don't step in and start having this conversation now, who's raising our kids? TikTok and all that fakeness? We got to be careful. Like, we have to really understand that authenticity and being in a place of truth and communicating and connecting is essential for, our overall well-being. So it's interesting because this podcast is about recovery, but I don't know, like, I'll just say, if we had recharge centers that we didn't have to get to the point of recovery at that point, what if we had places beforehand that people could be connecting and really charging up before they got to the point where it was really hard?
I understand, and that's yes, and I understand, and that's really interesting. But certainly, addiction plays a big role in
Well,
this.
of course it does.
You
Of course it
have
does.
preventative centers to do all of this.
Yeah.
So we do have prevention centers that will do this. But I understand the larger picture from you, and I understand where you're coming from. I see this, and we all see this in, say, early dating situations, right? When we put ourselves
Yeah.
on Match, when we give ourselves a profile that isn't completely who we are, or we go out in a very good way and we have a conversation with somebody, we have coffee with somebody, and we always try to put our best foot forward. Okay.
Right.
So there has to be a fine line between being authentic, yes, and also being an open book. So talk to us about that line. Where is it?
Well, I think you can still have discernment if you're authentic. It doesn't mean that you just let everyone in and you're kind of like, hey, no problem, you can take advantage of me. That's completely, to me, it's a different thing, because discernment is about, I am assessing this situation. Does this align in my personal truth? Right. So if you are really solid and grounded in your authenticity, you know what you're going to put up with and what you're not. Right. So we could go into a whole conversation about energy, right? And how people might come to you, but if you're not aligned with your own personal truth, you could get your energy drained from you very easily because you don't have discernment.
I understand. Well,
Yep.
yes, and I understand that. And that's certainly a good point. And on the other end of that, we understand that authenticity also gives us filters or gives us parameters for how much we're going to share and when we're going
100%.
to share it. Okay.
100%.
So that's a thing that we have more control over, because we also understand in our authenticity our vulnerability. Correct? Let's talk about vulnerability.
Correct. And I just want to add to your past point, because it's important to understand this is about your personal truth. It does not mean that you need to land blast all your stories, your backstories, but it's really about understanding that you're comfortable with who you are, all your shadows, all your parts, you're integrated and you love yourself for it anyways, right? Instead of feeling as though you got to tell everybody your story. That's not the situation. So into vulnerability is very very hard to do. What I will say is that our society hasn't done a very good job with honoring that vulnerability is a strength. For many people, they think of it as, oh, I'm weak if I'm showing you I'm vulnerable, or if I need to ask for help. Like, I actually feel like, and I was one of them, women in particular, especially alpha women, have a very hard time asking for help. And I think that, I feel like I'm getting into these bigger issues, but there's a struggle with women right now where I feel like we keep piling stuff on, and no one's actually asking vulnerable enough to say, hey, I need help. Like, this isn't working anymore, the way that we think that women are supposed to raise kids like they don't have careers, or run a career like they don't have kids. Like, it's too much, right? So we really need to think about vulnerability as a strength, and it's okay, because when you're vulnerable, when you take that mask down a little bit, you allow other people. And this is what I was saying about the retreat space. When I see one person start to put the mask down, they all put the mask down. and then they all start sharing and connecting. But that only happens if you're brave enough to be vulnerable. It's necessary for your own personal growth.
And that's certainly what happens in recovery. We turn around and say something extremely difficult from the very, very beginning I need help. I cannot do this alone. Okay. That's the first step in recovery for those of us that are 12 steppers, right? I cannot do this alone and I need some kind of help. So it always, for as far as I'm concerned, takes a very strong person to say, yes, I can, but an even stronger person to say, no, I can't. I need some help. So vulnerability certainly is very authentic. It's standing in your own truth, and it is directly linked to authenticity. There's no question about it. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the tangible benefits that individuals and maybe even organizations can experience by prioritizing authenticity. If we bring it into the workplace, what are the benefits?
Well, first and foremost, it has to be real, right? So it can't be one of those corporate checkbox exercises. It's like you actually have to hire leaders that are comfortable in their own skin, right? If you have insecure leaders, they're not going to be authentic. They're going to play and do different things. But if you hire the right leaders that are confident in who they are, they can show when they need assistance, and they give credit where credit is going to do, where credit is due. You will see a different type of culture being built. Cultures are built based on the leaders that you have in place. If you have inauthentic leaders, it will have a bigger impact in how your entire team will operate. If you have a shady leader up top who takes all the credit, guess what's going to happen? It's going to trickle down that they think that that's the kind of behavior that needs to be rewarded. And you're going to get more shady leaders coming up the pipeline. So one, your leadership. Two, you'll have a more inclusive environment. So I know that many organizations, this is a hot button right now about diversity and inclusion. You'll do that naturally because authentic leaders are open. They want to kind of engage other perspectives. It's all about motivating and inspiring and creative action. It's excellent. And it's not about power and control. So I think that your dynamic in your organization would shift quite a bit. It would be much more collaborative, communicative, where people are much happier to be there. Therefore, happier employees are more productive employees.
All right, let's talk about you a little bit personally. First of all, give us some resources or tools that individuals can utilize based on your own work, right? Tell us about yourself because we only have a few minutes left.
Okay.
Where can we find you? How can we work with you? And give us some resources in a transformative way that we can start to work on ourselves.
Okay, so very quickly, everybody should have a journal. I always say your journal is your best friend. Every client I ever work with, go get your best friend, go pick it out, because that is where you will be able to debunk a lot of these thoughts that you may have. We may not realize that there's a lot of conditioning that has happened over the years where we believe these narratives, these false narratives that we've told ourselves that are not true. So your journal will allow you, and make it something really special that speaks to you, but your journal will allow you to write it down if you're ever feeling stuck, and then you can debunk it, right? So there's a way to do that. So you have autocratic writing, which is amazing. So I'll leave you with this little tidbit because this is super fun. So autocratic writing is ask yourself the question. Let's say I didn't get the promotion at work, or I feel like I'm not good enough to do whatever it is. And you put it on the top of your page, and then you put on the timer for 5 minutes, and you just write. And you write without judgment. Don't take the pen off. And then what you'll do is you will do the same exercise and answer it with the opposite hand. And you will start writing with your left hand.
Oh my goodness, that's very inventive. Sorry. So we're talking about a journal situation, right? And I want people to know, because we only have 60 seconds left. I want people to know where to find you and how to get in touch with you, because I know your sessions are virtual as well as in person. Where can they find you, Kristina?
You can find me on my website, KristinaHolle.com, Instagram, Kristina Holle Real. I've got an amazing women's page, Successful Authentic Women. I would love you to join there. I have all my socials there. So please reach out. I'm always loving a great conversation. So thank you.
Kristina, thank you very much. We've learned a lot today about being authentic. Kristina Holle, Holle, consulting.com. Come to the pushybroadfromthebronx.com. I'm doing free consultations. Call me at 800-889-1757. I'll give you more information about Kristina. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for another episode of the Pushy Broad from the Bronx and Recovery Recharged. Have a great Wednesday. See you later.
All right, all clear, ladies. Well done.